You're listening to West Virginia Week, a regular podcast from West Virginia Public Broadcasting that looks back at the major stories of the week. I'm your host this week, Chris Schulz. On this West Virginia Week, parents are urged to have the difficult discussions and take the necessary steps to keep their children safe from harm after a teacher and state delegate is arrested for sexual abuse. Also, a recent national story looks at West Virginia's efforts to attract remote workers. We also get updates from flood recovery efforts, one power plant expands while another files for bankruptcy, and the state records its first case of measles in 2 years. Let's jump right in with a few short news stories. A state delegate accused of enticing a minor has officially resigned from the House of Delegates. The one-sentence resignation from David Elliott Pritt, which simply reads, quote, "I resign from the West Virginia House of Delegates effective immediately," unquote, was released as Pritt was scheduled to appear in court. The now former delegate from Fayette County and public school teacher was arrested and charged last week for enticing a minor after an investigation alleged he exchanged explicit images with a student before escalating to sexual abuse. House Speaker Roger Hanshaw formally requested Governor Patrick Morrisey call a special session of the House of Delegates to expel Pritt, a call the governor said he was ready to answer if a resignation was not forthcoming. In a statement accompanying the resignation, Hanshaw said, quote, "Our thoughts remain with these families and these victims. If convicted, Pritt faces a sentence of not less than 10 years to life imprisonment." For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schulz in Morgantown. Before Pritt submitted his resignation, he waived his right to a detention hearing. He will remain behind bars. The next step is to convene a grand jury to hear the charges against him. We'll have more on that story later. Meanwhile, across north-central West Virginia, cleanup efforts after last week's floods continue, with the help of scores of volunteers. Maria Young reports.
The town of Weston, with a population of just under 4,000, was one of the hardest-hit areas. Flash floods came at a pace Mayor Kim Harrison said is unprecedented.
It came about so much quicker and impacted so many people that have never been flooded before.
Almost immediately afterwards, though, she said the town was flooded in a very different way, with thousands of volunteers coming to help.
We've got stations set up all over town that are manned by volunteers. Church groups have gone door to door offering assistance with cleanup. It's just amazing.
Among the groups that have stepped up, Scouts in Fayette County for their annual National Jamboree. Gordon Shaddles with Scouting America says they create hygiene kits and flood buckets for those faced with natural disasters.
For the flood buckets, it's a 5-gallon bucket with cleaning supplies, gloves, tarps, everything, things people need there as they start cleaning up after this disaster.
More than 2,500 kits were delivered to the National Guard over the weekend, one organization among the many groups, nonprofits, churches, and thousands of individuals who've come in to help. Weston's Mayor Harrison says her town will be recovering for a long time to come.
As cheesy as it sounds, this disaster is the best tourism commercial for Weston and Lewis County that you could possibly ever get. Because people always look for a community where you're family and where everyone helps one another. And I've seen that in spades from the first moment of rainfall.
For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Maria Young in Charleston.
A new natural gas power plant is coming to the region, according to a press release from Governor Patrick Morrisey. Eric Douglas has more.
Dominion Energy has proposed building the Mount Storm Combined Cycle Station in Grant County. The project is expected to create more than 1,400 construction jobs and 150 permanent jobs once completed. Morrisey says the multi-billion-dollar energy investment will add 2.6 gigawatts of new natural gas generation for the region, important to his 50 gigawatts by 2050 initiative. The company said it plans to continue operating the existing 1.6 gigawatt coal-fired Mount Storm power station. Earlier this month, members of the United Mine Workers attended a meeting at the Public Service Commission of West Virginia to protest the creation of a 1.2 gigawatt gas-powered plant in Monongalia County. They feared the loss of coal jobs. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, this is Eric Douglas in Charleston.
The city of Wheeling broke ground Tuesday on a project that's expected to breathe new life into the downtown area. Maria Young reports.
The J.C. Lando redevelopment project features a boutique hotel and so much more. The $58.7 million project is funded primarily through private investment and includes private residences, restaurants, retail space, conference facilities, and public gathering areas. Wheeling Mayor Danny Magruder told an excited crowd that the project honors the city's past and embraces its future.
This new downtown hotel will bring visitors and strengthen Wheeling's position as a destination for tourism, business, and special events.
Once it's completed, the project is expected to create 187 jobs and generate nearly $23 million in annual economic activity. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Maria Young in Charleston.
The owner of a coal-fired power plant north of Parkersburg has filed for bankruptcy. Omnis Pleasance LLC filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in Delaware this week, which will allow the company to reorganize and pay creditors over time. Omnis purchased the coal-fired Pleasance Power Station in 2023 after the previous owners announced plans to demolish the plant and remediate the site. In court filings, the company lists more than $70 million in debts, consisting primarily of a $50 million low-interest loan from the West Virginia Economic Development Authority. Omnis made the purchase with the intention of using speculative technology to convert the plant to run on hydrogen derived from the production of graphite from coal. An initial hearing in bankruptcy proceedings is scheduled for Wednesday, July 29th at 1 p.m. in Wilmington, Delaware. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schulz in Morgantown. Applications for West Virginia's school clothing allowance program opened later than usual this year and closed earlier than expected. Maria Young reports.
A woman we'll call Barry is a single parent with 7 children. She asked not to be identified because the details are personal, but she told me she transitioned to part-time work after accepting 3 kinship placements.
2 of my children have complex medical and special needs, so there's a lot of doctor's appointments, there's a lot of therapies, there's a lot of things where it has caused me to only be able to work part-time.
With a household income of roughly $25,000, Barry said she relies on the vouchers, which pay $200 for each child in school. But the program was placed on hold temporarily against the backdrop of concerns about the state's Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, or TANF. Barry said she applied in person on July 20th, the first day it opened. When she called back to check her application, she said she was told the funds had all been depleted.
We won't be receiving the clothing vouchers this year, and it's just going to be a huge struggle.
Senator Brian Helton, a Republican from Fayette County, chairs the Senate Health and Human Resources Committee, which oversees the TANF program. He said this year $11.4 million was appropriated for the voucher program, the same amount as last year.
My understanding is as of today, there have been 52,000 children that have applied for the program, which is sort of in line with what has happened to previous years. But as far as the overall appropriation in amounts of dollars, there wasn't any reduction.
Helton said the program is depleted every year, but it appears that roughly the same number of children will receive assistance. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Maria Young in Charleston.
Transferring knowledge from master to apprentice is one of the oldest ways of handing down traditions. Eric Douglas reports applications are open for a program to support that relationship.
West Virginia Folklife, a project of the West Virginia Humanities Council, is now accepting applications for its statewide Folklife Apprenticeship Program. The program has supported expert traditional artists working with dedicated apprentices on a year-long apprenticeship to teach traditional music, dance, craft, foodways, and storytelling since 2017. Applications are due September 18th. Mentors and their apprentices must apply together. Applications will be evaluated by a review panel, and successful applicants will be notified in November 2026. Teaching artists will receive $3,000 and apprentices $800 for participating in the program. Visit our website at wvpublic.org for more information on how to apply. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, this is Eric Douglas in Charleston.
Families preparing to send their kids back to school can save a little bit of money this weekend. The state's annual back-to-school sales tax holiday begins at midnight Friday, July 31st, and runs through Monday, August 3rd. During this window, West Virginians will be exempt from the state's 6% sales tax on qualifying back-to-school essentials, including clothing and footwear at $125 or less per item, and laptops and tablets of $500 or less. Governor Patrick Morrisey also floated the possibility of further savings this weekend.
And I'm asking every vendor, if you have a chance to do some additional discounts for our citizens, that would be terrific. That's a great combination.
The tax holiday aligns with Morrisey's broader efforts to lower taxes and address affordability for West Virginians. Recent initiatives include a 5% across-the-board personal income tax cut and $230 million in overall annual tax relief for citizens. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schulz in Morgantown. The West Virginia Department of Health has confirmed the state's first case of measles in more than 2 years. Maria Young reports.
An unvaccinated Barber County man is the first confirmed measles case in West Virginia since April 2024. More than 2,300 cases have been reported nationwide, but until now, none of those was in West Virginia, which has one of the nation's highest child vaccination rates. Barber County Health Officer Dr. Jeffrey Madden said health officials are working to contain the spread of the disease.
We have been out in the community checking the populations that appear to be more at risk and doing additional vaccinations. If you think about the people around that person who has the measles, if they are not immune, 90% of those people are going to get measles.
Symptoms include a high fever, small white spots inside the mouth, and a red rash that comes 3 to 5 days later. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Maria Young in Charleston.
Once a candidate has been placed on the ballot for the general election, there are only certain reasons they can be removed. State election officials have been asked to try. The State Election Commission will meet next Friday, August 7th, to consider 2 written requests to disqualify David Elliott Pritt from the 2026 general election ballot. The now former delegate from Fayette County and public school teacher was arrested and charged last week for enticing a minor. Pritt formally resigned from the House of Delegates Monday. He won the Republican primary for House District 50 in May. If formally removed, the Republican Executive Committee of the district will have until August 17th to propose a replacement on the ballot. If not, there will be no Republican candidate for that House seat. In a press release, Secretary of State Chris Warner emphasized that while a felony conviction is considered a disqualifying factor for a candidate, being accused or charged with a felony is not. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schulz in Morgantown. One of the most iconic sites in West Virginia is on a short list of America's most beautiful places. Maria Young reports.
Architectural Digest has named its selection of the 11 most beautiful places in America. There's the Napali Coast in Hawaii, the Florida Keys, California's Big Sur, and coming in at number 11, the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve. It's only been a national park since 2020, but the magazine notes its spectacular whitewater rafting and rock climbing considered some of the best in the U.S. It also notes that the gorge isn't as well known as some other national parks, which Architectural Digest says is part of its appeal. The National Park Service shows nearly 2 million people visited the New River Gorge in 2025, adding to tourism's $9 billion annual economic impact. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Maria Young in Charleston.
The unexpected early closure of the state's school clothing allowance program has outraged some state leaders. In a statement released Thursday afternoon, Treasurer Larry Pack said it was unacceptable that the state claims to lack funding to help children while celebrating millions of dollars in budget surplus. The West Virginia School Clothing Allowance Program provides lower-income families with a $200 voucher to buy clothing for students before the school year starts. It closed after just 1 week with a notice that funds available through temporary assistance for needy families had been depleted. Pack says providing for these needy children is a fundamental duty of the government.
The governor, the administration turned off the spigots to this program. They can turn it back on in a moment's notice. We absolutely have the money.
This year, over 52,000 children applied for assistance. More than 80,000 children have received the clothing allowance in past years. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schulz in Morgantown. You're listening to West Virginia Week. And now, some of our top feature stories from the past week. The criminal charges against teacher and now former delegate Elliott Pritt shocked many of his colleagues and alarmed parents in West Virginia, who wonder how best to protect their children from predators who seem both successful and safe. Moore Capito is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of West Virginia, whose office is prosecuting the case. Capito talked with Maria Young about what specific steps parents can take to keep their children safe from harm.
When you initially heard about these charges against this member of the House of Delegates, what was your initial reaction?
I think my initial reaction is what is unknown probably to the public, but very well known in our office, is that we have very dedicated attorneys that work on cases that involve child crimes and exploitation crimes and grooming crimes every single day. This case in particular has hit the news given the level of profile of the defendant in the case. But what we hope the result will be is that parents that have children will have those difficult conversations, will discuss the importance of boundaries with their children, discuss the dangers of the online community, make children aware of the applications and that they are engaging in with their friends. Here's the thing about the internet and the way that kids communicate and oftentimes adults communicate in this day and age is that it's faceless. You really don't know who you are talking to. And so we encourage parents to be more and more involved, and it's never too often to check in with your children about who they are talking to and what they are doing.
What would you say parents out there need to do just technologically to stay on top of these kinds of threats?
Every parent needs to be aware that this can happen to any child. You know, predators target children from all walks of life. A child does not have to come from a broken home or appear vulnerable in order to be a target. This could happen to the wealthiest child in the state of West Virginia, and this could also happen to a child that is the most needy and the most vulnerable in West Virginia. The individuals that seek to perpetrate these sorts of crimes on children are highly, highly sophisticated people. And grooming may start out with innocent-seeming contacts and interactions. Predators have no problem taking their time to ultimately get to their goal of performing very, very bad activity. So here's what I would say. Parents should know that groomers are sophisticated enough now to not only tell children what they want to hear in order to get them to continue to engage, they also know how to coach children on what to say to their parents to not raise suspicion, which makes things even scarier as a parent. So when we ask those questions, don't leave that conversation having your child give you the perfunctory answer that is what you want to hear in order to satisfy yourself. Dig a little deeper. Make sure you have an idea of what's actually going on. Ask your child to show you what they are talking about on the platform that they're using. Show them how it works. Show them who you're talking to. Because as a parent, you have a right to know. So, if you're a child, say something. If you see something, say something. If something's uncomfortable, tell your parents. And parents, call our office. We will work with you. We have extremely professional investigative bodies, and we will find the best path forward, which means giving your child the best chance of success and ensuring that anybody that's on the street that is trying to perpetrate harm on the children in West Virginia is taken off the street just as soon as possible.
That was Moore Capito, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of West Virginia, talking with Maria Young about how best to keep children safe from dangerous predators. A recent national story identified West Virginia's Ascend program as being highly successful, even though the numbers are relatively small. News Director Eric Douglas caught up with NPR reporter Scott Neuman to discuss the program in relation to other similar efforts and what he discovered.
What did you go in expecting, or what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was probably like a lot of people who don't live in West Virginia, thinking that, what are the possibilities for a state like West Virginia to attract remote workers? I mean, obviously, there's a lot to offer in terms of outdoor activities and the scenery and the kind of lopsided, frankly, advantage in cost of living if you're coming from a place like DC or Chicago or something. But it's like hard to imagine that people, will actually pull up stakes and move clear across the country. I mean, in some cases, and in a couple of cases from people I talked to who had actually never even been to West Virginia, and they applied for this program and were accepted, and they made the move, and they found, something that they like.
Did you find anybody who pushed back against it or said, no, I came here, but as soon as my 2 years is up, I'm out?
I mean, actually, I didn't. Those people must exist because the retention rate after 2 years is only 96%. So I didn't find anybody from that 4%. But mostly it seems like it has worked out. I mean, like the main person, the main woman I spoke to, Ashley Eklund, in the story, she did say, I said, is this it for you? I mean, are you staying for good? And she said, well, no, I don't know. Maybe I want to do some more exploring. But for now, she said, but for now, I bought a house. I'm committed for a while. So, that's typically a few years at least.
So the big question, has it convinced you? Are you moving to West Virginia?
I have to admit, I've been on a list of West Virginia property for about 10 years now. I've been thinking about it off and on. But I'd probably not, but it's still an intriguing idea. I don't think I could. I'm not even sure if would be allowed to work remotely anyway. But if I, certainly if I could, it might be in the cards. I mean, one of the reasons why I became familiar with this story is because I go to West Virginia, 3 or 4 times a year because I go up to Spruce Knob to do astronomy there. So yeah, I wouldn't say I know the state real well, but I've definitely driven through it different seasons, and I understand the attraction.
Where does West Virginia's program, do you remember how many there are, first off, but where does West Virginia's program kind of rank in that whole, in those whole bring them home sort of efforts?
Yeah, I mean, there are about 70, and a lot of them are very local, like an individual city, like Noblesville, Indiana. I'm from Indiana, so Noblesville, Indiana has a program, for example. In terms of retention, as far as I can tell, West Virginia is perhaps the most successful, certainly in the top tier, more successful than even Tulsa Remote.
Is there anything we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things I didn't get into in the story very much is that, we are talking about a relatively small number of people. And there is a question about like, well, is 700 people enough to make a real difference? And yes and no. I mean, there's a flywheel effect, they call it, where you're potentially attracting family, and not just immediate family, but I talked to people whose parents decided to move to West Virginia after they did, or they're some other relations that aren't in their immediate family. So the numbers are relatively small, but the other thing is just the economic impact is kind of surprisingly large, even for that number of people. I mean, you're talking right now, organizers say about $750 million to the state. I mean, that's not entirely trivial. And they're already planning for another 1,000.
That was Scott Neuman from NPR speaking with Eric Douglas about his recent story on the Ascend West Virginia program and similar efforts to encourage digital nomads to move away from cities. Writer Emily Hackney has a complicated relationship with where she grew up. She loved her friends, family, the swimming holes, and wild places in Tazewell County, Virginia. But she felt stifled. Her new memoir, All That's Unseen, an Appalachian memoir, explores the tension and what happened when she did leave.
All That's Unseen is about a lot of things, but in a lot of ways, it seems to be about your relationship with your home community in Tazewell County, Virginia. I'd love to hear your thoughts on your relationship with Appalachia and how it's changed over the years.
Appalachia was all I knew for the first 20 years of my life. I mean, that's where I lived, that's where I grew up. And then I ended up moving away to Harvard. I transferred to Harvard when I was 20 years old as a sophomore. And that winter, I came home for break. And it's kind of like the saying, you never step into the same river twice. I came home and things felt different. I had this sense of unbelonging that just kind of grew stronger and stronger as I returned to Harvard and then came back home and kind of bounced back and forth between the two. When I came home that summer for break, I was back in Tazewell for 3 months. I got a job at WVVA, which is a news station. And even though I was really involved in the community again, I felt very much an outsider because people started to think strange things of me because I'd gone to Harvard and come back. I had a dentist appointment. My dentist was like, you don't talk like that when you're up at Harvard. He was just kind of blown away that I still had my same accent, even though it was the accent I've always had. So it seemed like people thought that Harvard would have changed me in a really drastic way in just the few months that I'd been attending. And then, I would go back up to Harvard and I'd be really homesick, but then I'd come back home and just feel like I didn't belong. And so I felt like I was caught in this middle ground for a long while, and maybe still am.
Would you mind reading something from the book?
Sure. I'd stumbled and tripped so many times that I was already soaked anyway, so I swam along fully clothed. Jeremy tossed his shirt on the bank and followed me. We floated and splashed and laughed and shouted, all alone in the middle of the river, in the middle of the woods, until our arms and legs were wobbly and we climbed up on the bank to dry. The sun moved in a hot, lazy arc across the sky. I wish you didn't have to go, Jeremy said. He put his arms behind his head, tattoos on full display. I rolled over and drank them in. In that magic moment, I wondered how I could trade something like this for the unknowns of city life. I wondered if Jeremy would be okay when I was gone. My heart pulsed with tenderness and worry while he stretched out in the sun with closed eyes and a dimpled smile. It was the first time in months he hadn't smelled like weed or liquor. But he was broke, homeless, and now jobless to boot. That suddenly felt wrong, disloyal, to leave him and everything else behind. In my Appalachia, loyalty is synonymous with respect. You're raised to revere the mountains and their people, your people. The sense of community is so strong because the world beyond, you hear, is strange and cold and unforgiving. And you know this must be true because that's where the politicians are, coal barons, the rich and powerful who look down on Appalachia and care about it only as far as they can take advantage of it. There are many reasons people don't leave Appalachia, but this narrative of trepidation is a major one. When you belong to such a rooted and close-knit community, leaving for something far away and unknown almost makes you a traitor, like saying, you're not good enough for me, to the people and places that raised you. That sentiment was part of the reason I'd stuck with Sam so long, and with my churches, and with God. Why until recently I'd never considered leaving. Why I felt as if I owed it to Jeremy to stay. Loyalty makes for committed, unbreakable bonds. It can also foster fear and discourage change. And I couldn't stay just for Jeremy's sake, or for tradition's sake, or because staying was the easiest thing to do. Before, I'd feared a life beyond the familiar. Now I feared never knowing anything else.
That was author Emily Hackney speaking with Mason Adams. To hear the rest of that interview and more, listen to Inside Appalachia, Sunday mornings at 7 and Sunday evenings at 6 on West Virginia Public Broadcasting. That's it for West Virginia Week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week. As always, you can see these stories and more at wvpublic.org. I'm Chris Schulz.